excited.
All right, who wants to pray us in? And then let's jump and go. Cool. Here, I'll do it. I'll pray us in.
Okay. Yay.
Father, thank you so much for this time together. Again, God, it is so delightful to spend the end of the day with this group of women, Father, the end of a long day, and you give me a cherry on top, and I thank you. Father, be with us as we go through this study. It's a lot for me, and I don't know if I'm equipped to teach it, but you've said I can, and therefore I will. Father, I pray that we'll learn from it, whatever it is you want us to learn.
Yes.
Open up our hearts and our minds to experience and accept whatever it is that you're speaking, Father. In Jesus' name, I give great thanks and I pray. Amen.
Hallelujah.
Amen.
Thanks. Woo.
All right, John chapter 9. This is the longest miracle in the book of John. So we may not get through the whole thing. We might not even attempt to, because the first part is just so full. We just might stay there. We'll see.
Yes. Okay. Right
It's
on.
just a lot.
Came with water. I'm ready.
There you go.
Yeah, right. I know. That's what I was thinking too.
So why don't we read this, because it's the whole chapter. So let's break it up. If I can get someone to read the first part, which is 1 through 12, and then the second part is 13 through 34, and then the last part is 35 through 41.
I can read the first part, 1 through 12, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
What was the second part? Oh, just
The
kidding.
second part is 13 through 34.
Okay. Are we going to stop after she reads the first part?
I want us to read the whole thing. So we'll do Charlie's, and then Tabby, you want to take the second part? Read that,
Sure.
and then somebody take that third part.
I could take the third part. Just remind me.
Thanks.
Sorry.
Thanks, Gian.
Yay. Okay. All right. So now as Jesus passed by, he saw a man who was blind from birth. And his disciples asked him, saying, Rabbi, who sinned, this man or his parents, that he was born blind? Jesus answered, neither this man nor his parents sinned, but that the works of God should be revealed in him. I must work the works of him who sent me while it is day. The night is coming when no one can work. As long as I am in the world, I am the light of the world. When he had said these things, he spat on the ground and made clay with the saliva, and he anointed the eyes of the blind man with the clay. And he said to him, go, wash in the pool of Siloam, which is translated sent. So he went and washed and came back seeing. Therefore, the neighbors and those who previously had seen that he was blind said, is not this he who sat and begged? Some said, this is he. Others said, he is like him. He said, I am he. Therefore, they said to him, how were your eyes opened? He answered and said, a man called Jesus made clay and anointed my eyes and said to me, go to the pool of Siloam and wash. So I went and washed, and I received sight. Then they said to him, where is he? He said, I do not know.
They brought the Pharisees the day on which Jesus had made open the man's eye was a Sabbath. Therefore the Pharisees also asked him how he had received his sight. He put mud on my eyes, the man replied, and I washed, and now I see. Some of the Pharisees said, this man is not from God, for he does not keep the Sabbath. But others asked, how can a sinner perform such signs? So they were divided. Then they turned again to the blind man. What have you to say about him? It was your eyes he opened. The man replied, he is a prophet. They still did not believe that he had been blind and had received his sight until they sent for the man's parents. Is this your son? They asked. Is this the one you say was born blind? How is it that now he can see? We know he is our son, the parents answered, and we know he was born blind. But now he can see. But how he can see now, or who opened his eyes, we don't know. Ask him. He is of age. He will speak for himself. What was I supposed to stop again? I forgot.
To close it out, 34.
Okay. His parents said this because they were afraid of the Jewish leaders who already had decided that anyone who acknowledged that Jesus was the Messiah would be put out of the synagogue. That was why his parents said, he is of age, ask him. A second time they summoned the man who had been blind. Give glory to God by telling the truth, they said. We know this man is a sinner. He replied, "Whether he is a sinner or not, I don't know. One thing I do know, I was blind, but now I see." Then they asked him, "What did he do to you? How did he open your eyes?" He answered, "I have told you already, and you did not listen. Why do you want to hear it again? Do you want to become his disciples too?" Then they hurled insults at him and said, "You are this fellow's disciple. We are disciples of Moses. We know that God spoke to Moses, but as for this fellow, we don't even know where he comes from." The man answered, "Now that is remarkable. You don't know where he comes from, yet he opened my eyes. We know that God does not listen to sinners. He listens to the godly person who does his will. Nobody has ever heard of opening the eyes of a man born blind. If this man were not from God, he could do nothing." To this they replied, "You were steeped in sin at birth. How dare you lecture us?" And they threw him out.
Well, there you go.
Jesus heard that they had thrown him out, and when he found him, he said, "Do you believe in the Son of Man?" "Who is he, sir?" the man asked. "Tell me so that I may believe in him." Jesus said, "You have now seen him. In fact, he is the one speaking to you." Then the man said, "Lord, I believe," and he worshipped him. Jesus said, "For judgment I have come into this world, so that the blind will see, and those who will see will become blind." Some Pharisees who were with him heard him say this and asked, "What? Are we blind too?" Jesus said, "If you were blind, you would not be guilty of sin. But now that you claim you can see, your guilt remains."
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Dang.
See, it's chock full. There's so much of it. I know.
I know that
I was
be
like,
quiet
drop the
time
mic.
this morning.
Yeah, literally. I know.
All right. What stands out for you as in hearing this? We're all kind of familiar with it. What jumps out at you?
I think for me, it's Jesus's clap back at the end, where he was like, you know, if you were blind, there'd be a reason. But because you think that you can see, then you're guilty of whatever it is. Yeah. So it was heated this morning in my quiet time. I was having a good time.
Oh, good. Good. What else?
There were so many. Yeah.
The first thing that I noticed was that, you know, he like spit in the mud and made him go wash in the pool. You know, there's so many other stories where he's just like, "Be healed." You know, so why did he make him do all this stuff? You know, I don't have the answer. It's just a question.
I question that too, because if you remember in Mark, he just touched the man's eyes. And
Right.
I thought that too. I was like, that's nasty. But you know, that's
Holy
coming
spit.
from somebody. Well, okay.
I heard, I don't know if this is necessarily true. This might just be a perspective, but I heard that it was because that was really an insult to spit on people, but that because growing up his whole life being blind, people would spit on him, and it was very derogatory. But that's why when Jesus did it, he said, "You're healed." So he was even healed emotionally. So I've heard that culturally. I don't know how much of that's true, but that's what I've heard. So
Okay, good.
I don't know if that's necessarily an answer, but
I have an idea. So I think it's because it was on the Sabbath. So like throughout all the miracles, I've noticed like he told the man who was like just lame, I think it was, to pick up his mat and walk on the Sabbath. And then this man went and washed on the Sabbath. So I think it's a direct message to the Pharisees, like, I am not below your laws. I am from God. He's the one who created these laws, and I am with him. So you guys don't, your laws don't mean that I can't do this.
Right. Okay, good.
hi. I know it's probably not like super important. I mean, there was tons of aha moments, but I did find it interesting that they were talking about his age and that he can speak for himself.
Mm-hmm.
I thought that was kind of interesting that it even mentioned that. So I feel like there's obviously something to it. I know that's probably not where we're going tonight, but I did notice that was the first thing that kind of went me go,
Yeah.
So
Can I read what it says in my application Bible about that? It says, when Jesus spit on the ground and made mud in order to repair the man's eyes, he was working with original materials. And Genesis 2:7 states that God formed Adam's body from the dust of the ground. Jesus was demonstrating the Creator's awareness of the materials he first used to shape the human body.
Ooh.
Very
That's
cool.
deep.
That is deep.
Yeah.
Like Tabby said, he's dropping the mic throughout this whole
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah.
Drop the
Yeah.
mic.
Boom.
Bam.
Boom.
He's going
Clapping back.
out with style.
I wonder if they knew what that meant, you know? Because this is like Jewish culture, so they see all these connections that we don't see. I
Right.
wonder if they saw that.
Yes.
Mhm.
Okay. Good. Okay, let's go back to the first part. So starting up in verse 1. It says, as he went along, he saw a man blind from birth. What makes that different? Because we've seen him heal people before. We've seen him heal the blind man before.
I think the fact, oh, sorry if I can answer.
Sure. Hey, Sharon.
Well, what
Sorry, I'm late.
You're okay.
Thank
We're in
you.
John 9, just FYI.
Okay.
What I saw in verse 1 that caught my eye was, as he went along, he saw a man. Like, I think in a lot of the others, we've seen people come to him. And this,
Yeah.
we're seeing that Jesus noticed somebody else.
Yes.
And in my mind, I was like, why'd he take notice of this man?
Right.
So I just thought that was interesting.
That's good, G.
Interesting.
Yeah. Yep, that stands out. It jumps out that he saw them. He approached this man. It wasn't like the man was sitting there, at least they don't say it. He wasn't saying, have mercy on me, I'm blind, which is what the other guy was doing. Jesus went up to him, knowing his condition. So Jesus knows. That brings us to the whole point of suffering. Everybody goes through some kind of suffering. Jesus knows the condition of this man, and he knows that this condition has been given to this man for a purpose. What was the purpose?
So that God could use it.
Yep.
Yeah,
So you the works of God could be revealed in him.
the works of God could be revealed. Now you've got the disciples. They know everything's a learning, everything's a teaching moment, right? They're privy to this now. So now, as opposed to
Finally.
Jesus asking the question, they're like, oh, I got this. I'm going to ask a question. I'm going to sound so smart. So the question they ask, oh, Jesus, I got a question. Who sinned? This man or his parents? Now, what's wrong with that question, first of all? Do you hear anything wrong with the question?
I mean,
Blind
it
from
just
birth.
didn't. Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry. He was blind from birth. Like, how is a baby gonna sin? Like, it doesn't make sense at all.
Yeah, he's blind from
well,
birth.
I guess the parent. I don't know.
What was that, Tavy? Tavy, were you? I'm sorry, you froze up.
There
There we
did
go.
I?
You're back.
Oh,
Okay.
Or I'm back.
everybody's freezing.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't have anything. Thought
Okay.
I did.
Okay. Well, what we're seeing is we're just seeing the culture. The culture was someone was always guilty. They were always looking for who's the blame. Did this man sin or did his parents sin?
Yeah.
There's something called, have you ever heard the term called the generational curse? Anybody ever heard that term before?
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah. Many, many times. Yeah. Probably my whole life I've heard that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Or that question. I'm sorry.
The thinking was generational curse exists. That means if my grandmother sinned, I also carry over that sin, and then my child carries over that sin. So he's taking a belief, a cultural belief that they have, and he's starting to deal with that right off the bat when they say, who sinned, this man or his parents? And Jesus said, neither one of them. This is to be specifically for the glory of God. But I want us, this is just an aside note, if you want to jot it down just for further study, there are four, the scripture describes 4 types of suffering, and it gives us a cause and a purpose for them. The first kind is suffering as a test of our faith. And we see that in the book of Job. And most people, we're all aware of that, It's like, oh yeah, God's testing me. And I'm like, okay. But he's not always testing us just for the sake of our faith. The second one, we suffer for the edification, to build us up. And we see that in Hebrews 12, verses 5 through 8, where he says, who of you, if you are sons of God, will not be disciplined by God? He says, so there are times when you're going to suffer because God is building you up. It's for your edification. And then the third one is we suffer for the punishment of our sin. And we saw that at the end of the guy that was lame. He said, pick up your mat and walk. He says, go on, stop sinning, remember, or something worse will happen to you.
Yeah.
And then the fourth one is the one that we're seeing today, in which there's suffering that shows God's glory. So sometimes God simply puts us in situations and allows us to go through situations so that he can come back and get us out of the situation. We may not like it, but we don't get to choose what kind of suffering we're going through, right? So here this man is, he's born blind specifically so Jesus could come along and bring him into the light. I don't know how old the man is. I don't know what his lifetime has been. And I know I shared with you girls before, my grandma was blind. So I don't have any clue what living a life in total darkness looks like and feels like. But if you can look at it and go, God chose me to come into the world this way. If I can really get my heart around that, it keeps me from being bitter and angry and nasty and all these other things, because I know that God's going to use it to glorify. So anyway, that was simply a side. Let's just keep going. So anyway, he brings him up. He wants to know who sinned, and Jesus starts to debunk all the things of the culture. He's constantly debunking the religious leaders and the various things that they put out there. So first he deals with the whole idea of generational curse. You're a sinner because your parents sinned, or you were born that way. And he's going, He came to, there's no condemnation, he says. God says there's no condemnation in you. So when I come, I clear you of all guilt. All sin. There's nothing that's holding you down at this point. Like I said, this one is loaded. Bear with me. So he takes them through there, but what's happened, there's interesting word play. Remember, we're always talking about what is he saying? What I wrote on the top of my paper, because I think we mentioned it before, your crisis is a setup to get you to look up.
Yeah.
The crisis is a setup to get us to look up. So just looking at this fact, you got this man born blind, and it's a major crisis in his life, but it's a setup to get him to look up for such a time as this, which is what we're about to see. So look in verse, and it starts to get really, his wording gets really interesting. Look in verse 4. Read verse 4.
Hey, BJ, can I say something real quick before we move on?
Sure.
I was just going to say the question that they asked about who sinned, it reminds me of Job and all his friends kind of asking like what he must have done to deserve this punishment, where God has specifically chosen or agreed to let Satan deal with him. And so, like, I don't know, it just reminded me of that as well, how they also didn't get it. So the generational thought process you were talking about reminded me of Job.
Yeah. Well, it's the same mindset that we have today, if we're honest, when we're dealing with people. Someone's going through something, we kind of think, okay, well, what'd you do? What'd you do to bring this on? We may not say it, but we're always looking for what did you do to make this happen? And it's not always the case that this person has done something.
Yeah.
So it's the same mindset that existed then really still exists with us, which is why we've got to watch ourselves. You know, like Gianna pointed out, with Job, his friends were like, what'd you do, dude? Curse him and just be gone. Be over, you know. Sometimes as friends, we speak the wrong thing. Just because it's all in our heads. We've been conditioned, and we simply keep pouring out what has always come out, which is what we're seeing. And then in verse 4, it says, as long as it is day, we must do the works of him who sent me. I thought that was a super interesting wording. I know, Charlie, when you read it, yours reads slightly different. Mine says, and I highlight, says, as long as it is day, we must do the works of him who sent me. Grammatically, that's incorrect, right?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yep.
It should either say, I must do the works of him who sent me, or we must do the works of him who sent. It's just grammatically is incorrect. So he's saying something. What's the point?
I think of like day being like life and then night is death. So like the end. So he's saying like night is coming. We must do the works of God who sent me, being Jesus. Like while we still are here, while we're still alive, because the end is coming. And am I making sense?
Yeah, you're making sense.
Okay. My words are not coming out from my brain the way I want them to.
Do you remember when we did the last sign, the feeding of the 5,000?
Yep.
When Jesus took the bread, he gave thanks, he blessed it, he broke it, and then he handed it to whom?
The disciples.
He handed it to the disciples, and then they proceeded to take it out. And remember, we talked about the miracle did not happen in the hands of the master.
Yeah. Right.
The miracle happened in the hands of whom?
The disciple.
The miracle happened in the hands of the disciple. We see the correlation between God and man working together. Somebody has said, when we were just talking earlier, why didn't he just say, bam, dude, you're healed?
Yeah.
Because we know he can.
Yeah.
But there's something about us working together. He says, we must do this work. I can do it on my own, but I'm not choosing to do it that way. He says, we must do the work of him who sent me. So that's why every sign that we've looked at, there's been a test, right? What's the purpose of a test?
See what you
To
know.
get us to look to God for everything.
People respond differently than the last.
Yeah. To see what we learned. What have you learned? What do you know? So he was constantly giving a test with every sign because he wanted to pass by, which what we saw in the last one. He wanted to reveal himself, but they weren't ready for it. They weren't passing the tests. They're passing. He's trying to get them to pass the test because he's trying to pass the baton. Anybody who's a track runner? Okay.
No, but I know your reference.
Okay. Dee, what did you run? Did you do relays?
No, I wish I was that fast. I was a distance runner.
Oh,
so
you one of those, girl.
I
I didn't like y'all, no.
didn't like us either.
I was a relay runner. But with relay, it's all about your ability to pass the baton, right? They say you win or you lose the race in the passing of the baton. That's why you practice that more than you practice anything, because your timing has to be right. I need to know when to take off. I need to know when to slow down. I need to know when to push my hand back. Jesus was practicing the passing of the baton, and they had to get that timing because he's saying, we have to do the works of him who sent me. And then he goes into this next part, which is pretty deep, and that's what Tabby, we're going to talk about this. He says, night is coming when no one works. But while I am in the world, I am the light of the world. He starts talking about this whole light, this night and day thing. What do you think? What is that all about? Is it just the daylight and the night time?
No, definitely not.
I think he's referencing that, work always needs to be done. It doesn't matter the time of day. You know what I mean? That there's
Mhm.
always work to do, and that you always need to be about God's work, no
Okay.
matter.
I feel like light gives us the ability to see. And so it just so happens this miracle was in regards to seeing. And I feel like, yeah, there's times when things happen at night, but they don't always have to be seen. They can be another type of learning. But I feel like there are certain things, since he is the light of the world, Jesus came to actually bring light so people can see, so they can see God for who he really is. So I'm thinking in very simplistic terms, but I feel like that was part of it.
Yeah.
Okay.
I
Good.
think going along with what BJ said about the we, this statement came right after the we, and then he acknowledges himself as I am in the world. I am the light of the world right now, presently. But when I'm gone, the idea of you guys will be the light of the world.
Yeah.
So while I'm here, I'm the light, but when I go, you guys need to be the light, part of the passing of the baton. And it's just like, I also just thought of the day being everything until Jesus comes back is day. Any time that we can all do work until there's a time when the work, we won't be doing work because it will be done and fully finished at that point. So until that point, you guys can be the light of the world, continue what I showed you. That's what we have to do for who sent me, is
Good.
my thought process.
Good. Good. Dee,
Well, I
That's
take
what I
it
was
as,
gonna
yeah, I
Dee,
take it
Dee
as,
was trying to say
I
something. Go
think
ahead.
Tabby agrees.
yeah, I think that Jesus is the bread of life. We all know that.
Right.
And what we're going through today in society is that we're in a dark period of time. So since he is of the world, he's still here, and it's our role as disciples to continue to share his love to others.
Right.
So that's how I see it. And then we look to him for strength because he's our bread of life.
Right.
That's how I envision it.
Good. Ooh, I love you girls. Yes. Jesus is, he gives us a few clues. So I'm just going to throw those out there. They're not in this passage. You can look at them at another time. Because he says, I am the light of the world, right? He says, as long as I'm in the world, I am the light of the world. We know that the daylight is the light of the world that he's referring to. But he says, you are going to have the light just a little while longer. He says that right before he goes where?
Sends to heaven.
Before he goes to the cross, and he's meeting with the Passover. He's meeting with his guys, and he says, okay, guys, you're going to have the light for just a little bit longer. So who is he talking about? Himself. So he's going, okay, we're talking light and day. You're going to have me now, but just a little bit longer. Then he goes on to say, just the next chapter from that, says when Judas then leaves to betray Jesus, it says, it is now night. So now we're starting to get a reference. We're going, okay, wait a minute. Jesus is saying, I am the light of the world. As long as I'm here with you, there's light, but you're only going to have the light for a little bit longer. So now it shows us that the light, the day, is him here. His presence here with us. But he's also showing us that the night then is what?
It's when he's no longer physically here.
When he is no longer physically here. And then when Jesus, so there is Jesus's death and his resurrection. It's a 3-day gap of night. Because he says, as long as I'm here, the light is here. And then once Jesus dies, he leaves us with the Holy Spirit.
Holy Spirit.
So we've got the light on this end, and we've got the light on this end, but there's night right there in the middle. Those are the 3 days, if you want to think of it that way, that the world stood still. So he's saying, we got work to do. My time is coming. You're only going to have me for a little bit of time. We got to start passing this test because we got to pass this baton. So come on, y'all. We got to do this.
Yeah.
So everything kicks up into high gear. And we're going to start to look at, we've already seen so many signs and miracles. But this one kind of turns everything on its heels a little bit. Has he ever healed? Or I've already answered my own question. Has he ever healed the blind? Has that ever been done before?
Yep.
That's
By
been
him.
done before. So that was nothing new. But what they had never seen was someone born blind
Right.
receiving the light.
Mm-hmm.
You notice they're always comparing him to whom?
Moses.
They're always comparing him to
Mhm.
Moses, right? Moses was the man. You know, so if Moses did it and he turned around and did it, they'd be like, please, Moses did that. Give me something new. So God was setting himself apart, and Moses was his man. He loved Moses, but he
Yeah.
was setting himself apart. You know, he's saying, this is who I am. I am the light. I am the man. So everything that we see through this one is him setting himself apart from any works that Moses had done. You know, so no matter how many wonderful things Moses did, he didn't give a man sight who did not have sight before. Okay, so then let's look at how he did it. And somebody made reference, because you got this. Chapter in verse 6. After saying this, he spat on the ground, made some mud with the saliva, and put it on the man's eyes. Ew. Somebody shared about this. What do you think? Somebody shared about it already. Jamie's face.
It's just the whole spit thing. I mean, I know he's Jesus, but still, like, he probably had like garlic that day and
His hummus.
hummus.
Yeah.
I hope he wasn't a loud spitter, like.
The
The loogie.
Ew. That's too funny.
Well, he was about to ask this man, well, what do you think this man's response? Well, how would you feel if somebody came up there? They're gonna, okay, I'm gonna take care of you, my friend. And they spit, they put some mud, and then they come and rub it on your face.
If I
Yeah.
could see afterwards, I'd be okay. But if I couldn't see, I'ma see enough to swing at you.
Well,
I'm gonna feel a little jaded. I'm gonna feel some type of way about it.
I mean, he was blind, so he probably didn't see him spit. He didn't know what he was putting on his eyes. He just felt something on his eyes, and then he could see, right? Does that make
I
sense?
mean, yeah, if it's the perspective of kind of like what I was saying, I feel like Jesus would have done it different. It's, you know, how we do our actions, it's really like a heart condition, why we do the things we do. So I feel like if he was spat on since he was a child and people showed their disregard for him being handicapped like that, you know, it'd be really easy to take a very negative connotation with that and feel disgusted. But if Jesus did it in the way where the man had no idea that's what he was doing and putting on his face, it really changes the perspective. Because yeah, if someone just randomly came up to me and spat on any part of my body, I would be like, what's your problem? But if I didn't know, and you know, it was one of those things where it actually served a purpose,
Right.
it would definitely change the outcome. Because then I'd be like, whatever, I'm glad you spat on me, spit on me more. Like, you know, if that healed my scar, cool, spit on the other scar, or you know, whatever my imperfections. But yeah, I feel like Jesus, I don't know, I feel like it was something more tender than something painful, something just mean. You know, Jesus obviously is not mean-spirited.
I think he was just showing the simplicity, like, you know, spit, it's a natural thing. Dirt, it's a natural thing. You know, when you were making mud pies and you didn't feel like going to get more water, you just kind of spit on it.
Oh yeah.
You know, it's just a natural thing.
I didn't do that. No.
I think it also reminds me of like God will take things that are dirty and make things clean.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what I saw there. Like, you think these things are dirty? Well, I can show you I can do something different with them that you don't see. It's just another way God continues to do that throughout these miracles.
Right.
Because bacon is delicious.
Really, though. I'm glad that was not stick. I'm glad that's it.
I love
Oh. I was like,
somebody was saying something. Did I miss it?
Gabby's
I-
saying she just got it. She just
Okay.
Yeah,
understood.
it's like I was like, what the heck does bacon have to do with it?
I love the fact that the Bible is so interesting.
Mhm.
If we really take our time and dig into it, you really find all these morsels, and it's because it's exciting. You know, that's how we can continue to grow year after year after year after year. If we don't dig into it, then it's just become the same old, same old. But to hear everybody's thoughts and ideas and just hear it just bouncing off, that's what God intended. You know, we should never grow too old to get anything from it.
Yeah.
So what I want to look at culturally, because so much of this, remember, he's undoing a lot of what their culture, especially their traditional religious culture, was all about.
Yep.
You know, so
Yeah.
you got the generational curse, and he was pushing that out of the way. So with saliva in particular, they viewed it as having healing properties. So for us, we look at it and we go, ooh, that's gross. For them,
Yeah.
it took on a whole different meaning because they thought it had healing properties. So when you think of it in those ways, you go, okay, I see why he would not be grossed out,
Yeah.
move away from it. Instead, if this man is going to place spit on my eyes, he's thinking, oh, then he's here to heal me. He's here to help me, not to hurt me. And then I love the fact, I think it was Gianna who mentioned it earlier, when he spits on the ground and he starts to make mud. And we know the correlation there with Genesis, with the creation of man.
Yep.
You know, we came out of the dirt. So you're looking at Jesus doing the things that the Father had done.
Yeah.
These are
Yep.
things Moses didn't do. They knew of it because this group, these were the Jews, they were all about the Passover and the feast, in which they learned all about the Old Testament and the way things were. So they were very familiar with out of dirt, God created. So now you have Jesus reaching down, spitting, and out of dirt, creating. So we're seeing God in the flesh come to life, doing the very things that they've grown up hearing about, they've grown up in awe of, but they've never ever seen anyone do before. So they're coming upon decision making. Do I accept that this man is from God because he's doing things I have never seen before? Or do I fight this? And we see later on which direction they go. Okay, so the spit thing, it had a purpose, and this is the purpose in it. You look at it. So he spits, puts the stuff on the guy's eyes, and then it tells the guy in verse 7, go, he told him, wash in the pool of Siloam. So he spits on, he put the stuff on his face, then he says, go. How much sense does that make?
Yeah, because
when you think about it, because he still couldn't see.
yeah, he's still blind. So how can he go? And how's he gonna find the pool?
There's something in that, right?
The pool from where? That's tricky.
The pool is known to be, if I can share my screen, let me see if I know how to do it. I'm always trying to do stuff. Because I did pull that up just so that we could see it. Or I thought I did. Maybe I didn't. I have a map of it, so if I can actually get to it, I want to show it to you. Give me a moment. Okay, it's saying I can't do that while I'm doing this. Okay, anyway, it's known to be 1,000 yards distance. So you have the temple court, and then down south of that, 1,000 yards down, you have the pool of Siloam. Now, right above it, which is not far at all, was the pool where the guy that was lame was lying. That's the pool that they thought, or they thought had all of the spiritual healing properties. Why didn't Jesus send him up to that pool? It was near the temple.
They didn't want to think that any of those properties had anything to do with his healing.
Bingo. Remember, he's dispelling all of these
Right.
religious traditions that they've been standing on.
Right.
He could have sent him to that pool, but then they would have taken credit for it by saying, oh yeah, see, this pool has all of these spiritual, supernatural properties. So instead, he sends him 1,000 yards down to this nothing little swimming pool and says, go. How do you think the man got there? He can't see, not yet. He got all this mud and saliva slapped on his eyes. And now he's got to find his way to the pool.
Either one of the disciples or someone helped him, or, you know, he's blind, but he's been blind all of his life. So I'm sure he, you know, knew the area.
Yeah.
Hopefully.
We don't know the distance because I don't know at what point Jesus met him. It could have been halfway. It could have been right outside the temple door gate. We don't know the distance that he personally had to travel. But this man had to fumble through the blindness to get to his healing. And I think there's something in that for us. When we don't see where God is trying to take us, we tend not to go. Right? We push against it. God, I can't get there. I can't do that. That don't make no sense.
Yeah.
He's telling this man to go blind. He had to have enough faith to stumble through if that's what he needed to do. What made him do it?
Belief. He believed he was going to be healed.
Yeah.
Trust and belief.
Yeah.
Yeah. I believe that saliva was part of building his faith because it was something that he understood to mean this is a healing substance. I think that gave him a little hope that went, I'm going to be healed. That ignited his faith enough that he was willing to stumble through. I'm sure he bumped into people, right? I'm sure some people were like, what are you doing? Go sit down. I'm sure he met with all sorts of resistance along the way, but it didn't stop him. What kinds of things stops us from reaching our healings?
Fear.
Yeah.
Fear is a big one.
Fear. What are we afraid of?
People.
Definitely people.
Afraid of people. I'm sure
That
this
is-
man had to encounter people who pushed back against him, but he kept going. What else keeps us from making it to our healing?
The what ifs. What if
Yeah,
it's not going to be?
uncertainty.
It's not going to come true. It's not going to happen.
Yes.
But all-
Disappointment.
Failure. Yeah.
Yes.
For me.
Yes. We don't know what all he had to get through in his own head
Right.
to make that journey.
Yeah.
He had to push through some things, push aside some things. I think that's part of why Jesus gave him a longer journey. He wanted to show us that our healing isn't always going to be instant.
Right.
There are times our healing takes time. This man had to travel 1,000 yards, which is what, 10 football fields
Yeah.
to get there. We have to look at ourselves and go, you know what? We don't know how long it's going to take us to get to our healing. What's stopping us? What's blocking us? What are we afraid of? How badly do we want it? And I wrote down on my paper, I wrote down, he had to have enough faith to sustain the journey. Do we have enough faith to sustain whatever our journey is? And our life journeys, they change, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes
Oh,
God
yeah.
is asking us something, and it's not a big deal at all. We got, oh God, I got this.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it's those long journeys when
Yeah.
you don't know where the next gig's coming from and how you're gonna pay your bill. You know,
Yeah.
you can go month 1 and
Yeah.
be like, okay, that hurts, but I'm okay. But you let month 5 roll around,
Right.
and then all of a sudden there's a panic.
Yep.
You know, I don't know, should I abort this journey? Maybe there is no healing on all of a sudden, all these things starts going through us. This man probably experienced all of this. And I think God gave him that long journey for that reason.
Yeah.
He's pulling him. He says, I'm taking you out of darkness into the light, but you're going to have to travel a journey to get there.
Yeah.
Right? You look at Peter when he walked on water briefly. He had enough faith to start the journey, but he didn't have enough faith to what? Sustain the journey.
Sustain.
That's why he started sinking. So I want you to think about yourself and go, okay, God, how many times have I aborted the journey because I just didn't have enough faith to sustain it?
Yeah.
How many times? Where did I give up? You know, this journey from Temecula to Reno, that was a 9-month journey. And there were many times my faith was here and my husband's faith, we kind of did this. Because I just wasn't sure we had the faith to make the journey. And like I said, started out okay. I was like, I'm okay. But it was when you didn't have the rent anymore and you didn't have a place to live anymore. Then all of a sudden it starts to get really scary.
Yep.
Okay, so he sends him down. He says, go and wash in the pool of Siloam. And then John puts in parentheses, this word means sent. Out of nowhere. So there's got to be a meaning. Why do you think he points that out?
Mm-hmm.
This word means sent.
Because the man was sent to the pool.
The man was sent, and he was sent by the man who had also been sent. Jesus was sent by God. Jesus is sending him. Now, the Pharisees, as we see later on, they're on a whole other journey. But who sent them?
The devil.
Said that like she was mad.
They sent themselves. They were on their own personal mission. We have to be careful. We can look at it and go, God, am I on a journey that you sent me on, or am I on my own journey? We see how off track the Pharisees became because they were on their own journey. It didn't matter what Jesus did. It didn't matter what Jesus said. It didn't matter what Jesus revealed. It wasn't their journey, so they pushed it aside. It's very easy for us to get on our own journey, if we're honest.
Yeah.
Because our journey takes us on the ride that we want to travel on.
Yeah.
You know, if we want it to be short, we can make it be short. We can manipulate it so that we don't have to do other things.
Yeah.
If we don't like people, we can keep them out of the journey, which we see with the Pharisees. So we've got to look at, he says, this place means sent. Jesus was sent by God. Jesus is sending the man because he's sending him to a healing. And we always ask ourselves, who's sending me? Whatever it is I'm doing, especially religious people, who sent you? Because if you sent yourself, you're in a very dangerous spot. So he starts to dismiss all of that garbage between them. Then you have his neighbors going, ooh, who is this guy? Is that the same guy? You know, people looking at you. All of a sudden, it says the guy, he dipped himself in the pool. It doesn't tell us exactly when the eyesight came. It just says he came back seeing. Mm-hmm. So he went and he dipped, and at some point, eyesight started to take place. When you look at it in the movies, it's usually when he first puts the water, on his eyes, and then all of a sudden the screen starts to do this. Maybe, but it could have also been on his walk back. He started to see. We don't know, but his faith, his healing was also tied into his obedience. If he hadn't gone, it wouldn't have happened. If he had stopped halfway through, it wouldn't have happened. If he had decided, well, I'm going to go to the other pool because it's closer, it wouldn't have happened. Mm-hmm. We have to see how our obedience works together with the blessing that God is trying to put upon our lives. So all of this is taking place. He comes back. Did this man know Jesus?
No.
Mm-mm. He didn't even know the man's name.
Yeah, exactly.
When the Pharisees like, who are you? Are you the man that was born blind? He said, yeah. What happened to you? This man put this stuff on me, told me to go, and I did it, and bam. And they were like, who is this man? I said, I don't know. Again, he's dispelling myths. A lot of times we, religious people, think God only works through us, religious people.
Yeah. Yep.
And we have seen it in at least 3 of the signs now, where he
Yep.
worked through people who did not even know who he was.
Yes.
So it wasn't about this man being a righteous man. It wasn't about this man knows the Bible like the back of his hand. The things that we stand on has nothing to do with who God chooses to save or not save, or heal or not heal.
Yep.
I'm going to pause. I'm just going to do a quick comparison because I said this one's long. We're not going to get through it. So we have 2 pool healings, right? We got the lame guy, and then we have the guy born blind. So the similarities is both of them had something to do with water.
Yeah.
Jesus tells the one, pick up your mat and walk. His obedience helped him to move forward. And we talked about, did this man ever even say, thank you? Do you remember?
I don't remember.
No.
Did not. He picked up his mat. He walked. He said, okay, to go. Stop sinning or something worse will happen to you. Like, yeah, dude, thank you. I didn't even say thank you. Okay, dude, bye. Took up his mat. He went on about life. At no point does it say he came back and said thank you. At no point does it say he even acknowledged Jesus by name.
Yeah.
God is constantly working in people's lives, and we don't even acknowledge it. We just move on. Now, what happened with this guy? Jesus heals him. He comes back seeing. He didn't know him either. But at some point, Jesus comes back. Remember, they kicked him. I'm skipping a lot. They kick him out of the synagogue, right?
Yeah.
Jesus comes to him. He says, tell me who you are. Tell me who this is, because I want to know. And then what does he do? Down in the spiritual blindness, down in 36. Or actually, Jesus asked me in 35, do you believe in the Son of Man? And then the man goes on to say, who is he?
Tell me who it is. I'll believe
Tell me
it.
who he
I'll
is.
believe it.
Tell me who he is. So Jesus says, hey, this is who he is. It is I. And then he goes on and says, and he believed and he worshiped him. What do you see different in the 2 men? They both received a healing. They both experienced this man, Jesus. What did you say, Tim?
Gratitude.
Gratitude.
Yep.
Gratitude. But Jesus is doing incredible things in our lives. We have to pause and find a way to find that gratitude and worship Him. If not, we are just like the first. It doesn't take our healing away. The healing is still there. The blessing is done. But the gratitude, it's the relationship. This man ends with a relationship where the other man did not. So we're seeing this man, just to sum it up quickly, and I skipped so much. You guys study this out. This one is a big one. We see this man born blind, meaning he came into the world in darkness. And how does he end?
Seeing not only physically, but spiritually too.
Yep.
How does that relate to us?
An everyday thing.
We can be physically seeing, but spiritually blind.
Yep.
And unless we remember to be grateful and thankful, we can fall back into that blindness as well.
Yeah. Yes. Remember, he's revealing himself. He's revealing, this is my power. I can take someone, and I will take someone who is totally in darkness, and I will bring them into the incredible light that I am. He did that by starting with somebody born in darkness.
Yep.
Because if we're born in darkness, we can't take credit for anything. There's nothing for us to hold on to. We're just, God, I am 100% at your mercy. The Pharisees never got to that point. You can study that and see that for yourself, because they were constantly fighting. Who is this man? Who are you calling us blind? We can see. So they had all this pomp and circumstance going on.
Yeah.
So even though they could see physically, they could not see spiritually. This man was just the opposite. He could not see physically. And Jesus brought him to a place where he could see both physically and spiritually. And he is saying to us, I can take your life if you give it to me. And I can change your life to a point where I can heal you physically. I do care about what you are physically going through, the suffering that you're enduring. I do care, and I can take you through that and heal you. He says, but I can also take you out of the darkness in which you've been living and bring you into a light that you've never experienced before. The things that we take for granted versus the things that this man took for granted, I'm sure were night and day. I'm sure once he saw that water for the first time, it meant something. I'm sure once he saw his reflection in that water, it meant something.
Yep. Oh, yeah.
Once he saw all those people that he had probably bumped into on the way there, it meant something different.
Yeah.
We have to take our lives, look at our lives and go, God, what am I taking for granted?
Good.
What am I taking for granted? What if I looked through the lenses as though I have never seen this before? How would that change our relationships with one another? We get tired of each other. We go, Tavy, stop calling me. Oh man, she's bugging me again. It's like we just kind of.
You love me.
I do. But because we take our relationships for granted, we don't embrace them the way this man I'm sure embraced it. You know, having the pandemic have us all having to stay inside. All of a sudden, everybody's like, ah. It was good. It forced us to look at what we've been taking for granted.
Yeah.
True.
Jesus, your relationship with him, are you taking it for granted?
It's good.
The healing of the lame man, he took it for granted. He was like, you did something for me? Yeah. Good. You should have. Good job. And moved on.
Yeah.
Take the time tonight, think about all the things that Jesus has done for you.
Mm-hmm.
And give yourself an opportunity to see it for the first time, the way this blind man saw for the first time. I guarantee it will strengthen your relationship. There was no way that these people could ever pull this man away from Jesus at this point. He knew that if he said, yes, this man is Jesus and he did this, he was going to get kicked out of the synagogue.
Mm-hmm.
The equivalent of being kicked out of the church. A lot of times we're more concerned about the church liking us than being in relationship with Jesus.
Yep.
So
True.
really look at what has he done in my life? What have I taken for granted? And get yourself back to a point of, God, thank you. Thank you. Even if my friends didn't like it and didn't understand it, even if the church didn't like it, didn't understand, and my parents didn't like it, relationship. That's what changed this man's life. It brought him into a light that he had never seen before.
Mm-hmm.
And it kept him in a light that he would never let go of.
Yeah.
We're always wondering, what will separate me from the love of Christ? That answer should be nothing. But if we're honest, there are all sorts of things that we allow to separate us from the love of Christ. But if we go back to our blindness and just start writing down all those things when we finally started to see them. The first time I saw my baby. The first time I saw, and I think about my grandma, and she was born blind. She had 14 kids, but she never saw one.
Wow.
So her description of them was always by the touch.
I was going to say kids.
Oh, yeah.
It was always by the touch.
DJ, come back.
Oh, no.
Yes. When they talk about the babies. Yeah. Can you still hear me though? There we go. When they talk about their babies, they talk about how they smell.
Oh boy.
They talk about how they feel. Ooh, those little chunky legs. It's like
That's like my house. You never know about my internet. I'm surprised I've made it through.
Yeah, janky internet. Yeah, we got janky internet too.
Mine's constantly going. Constantly going. Anyway, that's the internet telling us we need to end it. I'm hoping to get enough movement going that it
Ever
gives
have
us.
good internet.
It's
Oh.
true. Oh
There
my
it is.
gosh. I don't even want to talk
There
about
we
that.
go.
There we
There
are.
it is.
Hey,
It's
BJ.
freezing.
Anyway, the internet is telling us it's time to stop. But you think about my grandma, she was always talking about how we smelled, how we felt.
You know, I was just starting to think, oh, the storm must have blown over because.
All right, it's done. I think the internet is over. So if you can hear me, do some homework tonight to get your heart reattached to Jesus.
She's back.
I came back to say goodbye.
We thank you for that.
BJ, really
We
good.
need to make this a part 2.
We'll make it. Yeah, there's so much that we did not get to, so we may have
People
to
are
do
spiritually
that.
deaf too.
Yeah, all the spiritual. But for now, our homework: go back to when you were completely blind,
Yeah.
and make note of when God started to give you sight, and reconnect with that gratitude. Amen. That's all I
Good.
got,
Amen.
because the
Good
internet's
stuff.
gonna probably go out again.
Aw.
Stuff, lady. Thank you, BJ.
Thank
Love you
BJ.
guys.
Thanks so much,
Love you
BJ.
too.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you. Love
Thank
you
you.
too.
Bye, guys. Love
Bye.
Bye,
guys.
ladies. See you next week. Take
See
care,
ya.
everyone.
Yeah.
It's like a party.